Hey everybody, today we're going to be making a yard nativity set, me and my brother Bryan. So we ordered these plans, I don't know if you can see this, from the Winfield collection. And so we're going to start building it today and kind of see how it goes, and then we'll do a review at the end. So stick around. My name is James, his name is Bryan, and this is Homestyle Woodcrafts. In this step, Bryan and I lay out the tracing paper so that we can trace the pattern onto the wood. Okay, so we have laid out the board on my portable work tables, and and we put the tracing paper. You can buy the tracing paper, and we laid that down because you trace the pattern. And then the tracing paper will transfer that to the wood. And so now we're about to start the tracing process. Overall, it went pretty good. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it was terrific. It was actually easier than I thought.
We missed a couple of lines, but those will be easy to draw in. And one of the things about this pattern, it uses a lot of wavy lines, so it's error tolerant, fortunately. So the next step is cutting it out. First thing I'm going to do is just cut the board down so it's easier to work with. So I'll just do a straight cross cut with my circular saw, and then I'll start to work on it with my jigsaw. Before I start cutting this, I just wanted to note for you that for interior cuts, one, I try to mark them so I cut out the right thing. And two, because I'm using a jigsaw, I will drill a hole first and then insert the blade down the hole and then start the cut. I've finished cutting out the two back fence pieces. They fit together like this. So things are looking good. I would recommend that you give yourself plenty of time to saw and not rush it. There is a lot of sawing to be done on this project. With the fence pieces done, I'll be starting in on the main part of the manger with Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus. Here's a little tip for you as you cut out the star to help navigate the points. If you drill a hole at a little bit from the top of each point, that will give you an easy place to work with as you cut the points out. Well, they're all cut out. We're back. Bryan has done some of the painting stuff, and so Bryan, tell us what you did since I turned it over to you.
Well, I picked it up and then brought it home, laid it out, and I got some primer paint, white primer paint, as you can see, and I painted or primed one side with a brush, this brush. And then when it dried, the next night I turned it over and did the other side, but this time I used the roller, which went a lot better. Much easier to use the roller than the brush. And then the third time I painted or primed, I picked them up or stood them up and painted the edges, which took quite a bit of time. And it left drips that I'll need to sand off.
Okay. So next step is what?
Well, I want to paint it still, so once it's all dry, and there's a few little spots I missed, so I'll touch those up and after I sand it, then I'll sand off the drips and I'll paint it.
Bryan and I made some modifications to the original plan, and the first was instead of using 1/2-inch plywood, we used 3/4-inch plywood, so a little thicker piece here. And that resulted in the need to widen some of the cutout pieces where it will fit together. And then we also chamfered some of the edges where pieces fit together to ease the fitting. So now we're going to talk about some tips that we kind of figured out along the way. So first of all, I would say take time on the tracing as you take the pattern and the tracing paper and trace it out on the sheet of plywood. It's worth taking time to get a good trace.
And I think one thing that was helpful too was having a different color pen or marker because the lines on the plans were black. Mm-hmm. So even using a blue marker, we missed a few spots. So that helps you see where you've traced.
Yeah, that's a good idea. When you're tracing, take some time to smooth the tracing paper and the pattern out, because for us, we taped it down, and sometimes it kind of bunched up. Remember that?
Yeah. So when we were tracing, it would like bunch up, and then you'd skip.
Yeah. Another thing I would say is because the pattern comes in 3 different sheets, you have to align the sheets to trace the pattern out fully. And so just taking care that you line those up carefully.
Yeah, and there's match lines on the designs or on the sheets to help you, something we didn't notice right off the bat. And so, and because you want to make the best use of your wood, the sheet of plywood.
Yeah. Speaking of the tracing paper, we bought some from the company, the Winfield collection. And of course, you could probably buy it anywhere. But one of the advantages is they have some larger sizes. And we bought a 4x8 sheet of the tracing paper, and I found that to be very handy instead of having to do a bunch of little pieces. So,
and how much was that?
That was about $10.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was worth it. We mentioned this, but we worked together on tracing. There's no reason 2 people. It's a lot of tracing, so having 2 people do it. The most challenging part are the fence pieces, just because of the way they connect and flip. And so I would just say pay close attention to the tracing of those pieces so you get it right. So when you cut it out, they will actually fit together. We almost messed that one up. Another thing that I found very helpful is after we trace it out, I went through and put an X on all the parts that were cutouts to make sure that we cut the right parts out. That's key, because if you cut the wrong parts out, then you've done it wrong.
Yeah.
Depending on the kind of plywood you get, you may, on the edges, to make them more impervious to the weather, you may need to fill in the voids. When you are sawing it out, it was very handy for me to have a drill kind of buddying up with the jigsaw, because you can drill holes to access difficult sawing points when you're sawing things out, like tight corners and things like that. Another one I would say is give yourself plenty of time. There's a lot of cutting here, and anytime you rush through stuff, you start making mistakes. And also, if you go fast, you'll splinter more of the wood. So just giving yourself time to cut it out will lend itself to a better product at the end.
One thing you noted, though, I think the pattern is sort of forgiving, because a lot of it's wavy anyway, that if you make a mistake or quite on the line, cut on the line, it's probably not going to be noticeable.
Right. The pattern is not just straight lines. It's kind of wavy, kind of very rustic feeling. And so it's very tolerant of that. I mentioned earlier we chamfered some of the parts, and so to facilitate fitting together, and I would strongly recommend doing that if you have the tools to do it. I used a router with a chamfer bit, and it was pretty fast.
Yeah, and just based on our experience putting it together, I would say if you hadn't done that, I don't know if it would have gone together.
Yeah, I don't know. And I like to just say chamfer. Yeah. Okay, one tip we forgot to mention is when you're putting the connecting points together, just make sure you leave, I would say, even some extra space in the openings to facilitate putting the pieces together. And also remember, you're going to be priming and painting them, which is going to take up some of the space that you would have used, or that would be used to fit them together. So just make sure those connecting points fit well together and will accommodate the extra paint.
One other tip I wanted to mention was that getting a little roller like this is really helpful to do the sides. Obviously, some of the corners you need a small brush for as well. I think a small foam brush would be super helpful.
Okay, here it is. It's all done. It looks really good. And while Bryan still has some painting to do, it can all fit together. And we wanted to show you what it looks like. And also give you a few tips about putting it together. So the frame piece with the star, if you tip that forward and then insert these pieces in here, the fence pieces, while it's tipped forward, that helps put it together. And then fit Mary and the baby Jesus and Joseph on. And finally, we don't have them up, you can put the sheep in place. These connections here, if you make them a little extra wide, it will ease the fitting together. Now it's time for the review. So Bryan, we start on this project for you. So why don't you tell us what you think?
I love it. I think it's terrific. It's exactly what I was hoping for. A nativity scene that I could put out in my front yard and could be seen from the road that runs in front of our house, and that would, evoke images of Jesus Christ and his birth. And yeah, I think it's a great project.
Yeah. So can I say a couple things? Okay, so yeah, I think it's great. I also think it turned out very well. A couple of things that I really like about it are, one, that the design is tolerant of error, which is great because I always seem to do a little something wrong on my projects. And I thought the plans were good. I think it looks nice overall, and I like that it only took one sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
And you can kind of, choose your plywood based on your budget.
It was wood efficient.
Yes.
The one thing I would change is the baby Jesus cradle. To me, seems more like R2-D2 out of Star Wars. But, I think everybody knows, given the context, what it's supposed to represent.
Thank you for that, Bryan.
I guess one other thing I might change would just be, it'd be nice to have a camel and a donkey, because that seems typical in a nativity scene.
So you can get other cutout plans for animals from the same group, the Winfield collection. And I've also seen free plans out on the internet that you could look at also.
And to be fair, since the plans were intended to fit on a 4x8 sheet of plywood, the camel would have been fairly small.
Right.
And the donkey would have been about the size of the sheep.
Right. Shetland. Camel. All right, we hope you enjoyed this review and watching the process of it being built. We'd love to hear your ideas about building nativities, so put them down in the comments, and I hope you subscribe. Thanks. Bye.